David Goggins is where UFC careers go to die.
Alright, so Israel Adesanya just released a video where he revealed that he's now training with David Goggins, and I'm sorry, but can someone explain to me what...
Last time David Goggins ran a training camp with someone, aka Tony Ferguson, he got absolutely humiliated by Paddy Pimblett.
Qualifications David Goggins has to be training UFC fighters, much less cornering them like he's also done...
Second of all, endurance training is a lot different than fight training. Sure, there may be some carryover, but doing the Stairmaster until you puke is not necessarily good for a fighter.
In the past. If you've been paying attention recently, then you've probably noticed that a growing number of fighters have decided to partner up with Goggins, and I personally feel like it's a waste of time. When it comes to actually training professional UFC fighters, this dude is completely in over his head, and I worry that he might be doing more harm than he is good. Sure, he's a former Navy SEAL with incredible endurance, but let's be real here, a military resume and a bunch of ultra marathons under your belt does not at all translate into effective MMA coaching, even if just as a strength and conditioning coach. Personally, I think it's a little bit irresponsible for Goggins to continue this little vanity project of his, but
especially it's not a good idea for Israel Adesanya because he's coming off losses and he's not in peak form. So this is kind of like a bad omen. Training with Goggins as like a last resort. Meanwhile, you should be going back to what worked, the basics.
At the same time, it's not his fault that these fighters are turning to him as some sort of career Viagra, and yeah, I'll be talking about all this and more throughout this video. Okay, first let's talk about the fighters who've made the decision to bring Goggins into their camps. Tony Ferguson is for sure the most infamous example. Late in 2023, Tony made it public that he teamed up with David Goggins in order for him to strengthen his conditioning and mental toughness ahead of his fight with Paddy Pimblett, which, as we know, have always been Ferguson's two biggest weaknesses as a fighter. Look, man, Tony's always had some questionable qualities to him as a competitor, but being mentally weak and having a suspect gas tank were never his problem, so the choice to reel in Goggins has always felt a little bit strange to me.
What did you make of David Goggins in there with Ferguson? Do you think that's a bit bizarre, or are you just like, that's typical Tony Ferguson?
I think it's quite stupid, you know what I mean? If there's two things that Tony's never needed help with, it's his mental state, because he's one of the... Look at the armbar Charles had him in, you know what I mean? He didn't tap. That's another...
If Goggins is natty, I'm the next trans queen of England. Bro, Adesanya isn't doing a Goggins camp, I promise you. It's probably just a PR stunt. But it's a stupid PR stunt. Because sure, Goggins has clout, but he has no basis in the UFC or MMA. Running a full fight camp with Tony Ferguson essentially drained Tony Ferguson of any sort of energy or power whatsoever. He was deflated, slow, and got dogged.
Right there. And then look at his cardio. He's never had a problem with his cardio. So I don't understand why he done it. You know what I mean? He must be thinking that he's not where he was mentally.
Tony let Goggins drag him through one of the most unnecessary hell weeks known to man. All of this while Ferguson was already 39 years old, coming off of multiple beatings, and desperately needing to preserve what little was left of his career. Sure, it's cool that Ferguson's the only person that's ever finished Goggins' Hell Week program and all, but there's so much more to fighting than being in really good shape. Obviously, strength and conditioning is a crucial part of the sport, but the idea of Tony absolutely destroying his body just a few weeks before his fight seems really dumb, and it definitely makes me question Goggins' decision-making skills as a trainer.
David Goggins in his corner though.
David Goggins isn't a strength and conditioning coach. He knows nothing about athleticism. That probably triggered a lot of soy boys. But what he is good at is endurance sports, aka ultra marathons, which is not, that's like past endurance. That's just like psychopathy. That's just like war of attrition. I hate myself. I'm gonna do this until my feet bleed.
David Goggins ain't got shit on me, know what I mean? When I finish Tony, I'll go over to David and say, who's gonna carry the boat, son? who's going to carry them? Because it's not fucking him, is it?
Like, at the end of the day, was this really the best allocation of time and energy for Tony at this stage?
Like, a lot of people respect Goggins for his masochism. But I'll tell you, bucko, it's nothing to be proud of. It's like, okay, sure, you hate yourself. So what? What are you going to do about it?
In his career. And I understand that Tony is just as much to blame here as Goggins, but my point here is that
And my point is further exemplified by Paddy Pimblett absolutely destroying his most recent opponent.
really doubt that David's training regimen...
Who did he just fight? He just mugged Chandler. He just murdered him in cold blood.
holds any practical value to use as preparation for a UFC fight. And look, it's not just me saying this. Both active and retired fighters within the UFC have questioned how useful Goggins' Hell Week is for a fighter like Tony. For example, Daniel Cormier had this to say:
he's gonna be in shape, but I don't know that the fatigue of our cardio is gonna be the issue. That's not what's wrong with Tony Ferguson.
Right.
It's not that he's not preparing himself right. It's just other things, other reasons are why he's losing. And I don't know if David Goggins is gonna be able to change that. Because, dude, the weathering and the beatings that you take in that octagon can't be fixed just by mental approach and working harder in the gym. It just takes something a little bit more. And also,
of course it can. Dude, you just don't have the mindset of David Iron Man Goggins.
I worry. You know, Goggins he works so hard, he don't care.
Who's going to carry the boats? The real question is, who's going to carry the stretcher after Adesanya gets laid out like Tony Ferguson?
How you feeling? He's going to make you work. I hope he doesn't beat Tony down and overtrain him.
Then Chael Sonnen added to the conversation when he said this:
I love how hard Tony is working, and good things come from hard work, there's no question, but there's nothing, not the stair stepper, not the throwing up, not the lunges, not the sprints on the track. There's nothing that you'll be doing in the octagon against Paddy. And no matter how much you want to say it's cross-training or it helps, you might even be right, but I'm right too. That's not what the judges are going to be watching for. So if you've only got so much energy at an older age like Tony, you might want to spend it in jiu-jitsu. You might spend it in wrestling. You might want to spend it in sparring. Something that resembles what you'll be...
It's almost like specificity is what matters. And that's true with all sports. You can cross-train all you want, but those are kind of like the icing on the cake to your initial skill set and task that you have to perform.
Doing opposite Paddy on December 16th. That's my only thought.
Goggins also trained Jessica Ai prior to her fight against Cynthia Calvillo in 2020. Much like Ferguson, instead of actually addressing her technical flaws and developing some damn defense, I guess she thought what she really needed was to get in really, really good shape. And somehow, even though she spent weeks getting in peak physical condition, Jessica still ended up missing weight for this fight, and she lost it by unanimous decision, which is fucking pathetic. Of course, it's not David's fault that Ai has always been a terrible fighter in general, but come on, all this talk about mental toughness and then not being able to step on the scale at the proper weight is crazy. Honestly, the only bit of success that David's had with training a UFC fighter is when he was a part of Jon Jones' camp for his fight with Cyril Gane. As you probably already guessed, Jones...
Yeah, but Jon Jones is Jon Jones. No amount of David Goggins is going to help Jon Jones. We're looking at the Grim Reaper himself, the claimer of souls.
Brought in Goggins to help build up mental resilience and to push him to the edge during workouts. Obviously, Jon went on to make easy work out of Cyril, thus this ends up being a good look for Goggins, but come on, man, this was always going to be the result of the fight regardless of whether or not he was involved with...
He's just there for clout.
Jon's camp. And now that Israel Adesanya has signed on to his program, I am feeling an unmistakable sense of concern that more fighters are going to turn to Goggins' methods in order to try and revitalize their careers, and I am
Goggins hasn't coached a single person to victory. He's not an MMA coach.
concerned that he is going to continue trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sure, David's radical approach to physical fitness and mental toughness would benefit 99% of people on planet Earth, but when it comes to professional fighters, and I guess pro athletes in general, there's definitely such thing as overtraining. And I'm not gonna lie, I do wonder if Goggins' ego won't allow itself to admit that his extreme training methods aren't practical for UFC fighters. I mean, this is the same guy who has attached so much of his identity with his physical fitness routine, and he's constantly preaching about how pushing your body to its breaking point on a regular basis.
Yeah, but pull-ups aren't going to help you when you're getting punched.
Is the key to success. And I think therein lies the problem when it comes to Goggins as a UFC trainer. He doesn't really believe in the idea of training smarter, not harder. To him, having anything left in the tank after a training session is a sign of mental weakness, and all mental weakness needs to be eradicated from the body. But in reality, rest, recuperation, recovery are all pivotal aspects of the sport, and it's important for fighters to ensure that they walk into the ring in optimal condition, both physically and mentally. Look, mental toughness is crucial. Nobody here is denying that, but MMA isn't all about who can suffer the most. It's equal parts skill, strategy, adapting under pressure, and a ton of other stuff as well. Goggins' military-style training regimens might build endurance and mental strength, but the mentally stronger fighter doesn't necessarily win every fight. And yeah, I guess I'll say it, I do think it is a little bit arrogant of him to believe that his mental toughness program is a one-size-fits-all solution for people of all walks of life, including professional fighters. Goggins being able to say that he's a strength and conditioning mentor for UFC champions is a very good look for his brand, but in practice, I really question if he's actually doing right by those he works with. But at the same time, when Jon Jones, Tony Ferguson, and Israel Adesanya come to him and ask him to train them, what is he gonna say? No?
Making people throw up is not an indication of your quality of a coach. Half this shit is just a nervous system response. Because they're optimized for one thing, and he's making him go to their limits in a completely different arena.
I mean, to be honest, I feel like he probably should start saying no at this point, but come on, man. Realistically, nobody in his shoes would turn down an opportunity to work with clientele.
Like, if these fighters put Goggins through their workouts, Goggins would puke. 100%.
Like that. And with that being said, I guess my biggest question at this point is why are these fighters hiring David Goggins to put them through absolute hell at such a late stage in their careers? Like, I think I can understand it a little bit more if, say, I don't know, Chase Hooper or Raul Rosas Jr. worked with him for a camp or two, but why are these fighters that have so much mileage in the sport doing this to themselves? If you want me to be honest, when it comes to Tony, Israel, and Jessica I can't help but suspect that they sought out Goggins because they started to doubt themselves and if they still had it in them to keep pushing forward. Jon, on the other hand, is just a crazy person who I genuinely think wanted to get pushed to hell and back again by Goggins to see what it was like. But for the other three fighters that David's trained, none of them came to him as young, hungry prospects that were on the rise. All of them sought him out when their stocks were the lowest they've ever been, and I'm not gonna lie, in each of these cases, they all feel like an act of desperation from the fighters in hopes to jumpstart their dying careers. Because it's such a bizarre, out of left field decision to make. The chips are down.
Wouldn't be surprised if Goggins paid them. I wouldn't be surprised if they paid Goggins. I mean, it goes both ways here.
On your career and you decide to partner up with an ultra marathon runner who has zero professional combat sports experience. I mean, maybe they all wanted to see if they still had the mental toughness to
You might as well hire Ashton Hall. We need to get it to 10,000.
even continue fighting, and they figured that training with Goggins would be the best way to put their resilience to the test. So maybe the issue here isn't Goggins, maybe it's that desperate fighters will try anything when they run out of actual answers. And in that regard, David Goggins is just the latest snake oil. And in the case of Tony and Israel, who've both been competing in martial arts since they were kids, and seeing as both their times as professional athletes are clearly coming to an end, I can see how anybody in their shoes would be willing to seek out the most extreme solutions to prolonging their careers instead of gracefully coming to terms with the fact that they're—
Who did Adesanya get clapped by recently? To me, Goggins is the same as Steven Seagal. Oh my god, he was literally a Navy SEAL. He had the world record for pull-ups. Have you read his book? Oh no, dude. Adesanya was so good. And then he lost to Jan, Pereira, Strickland, Dreykus, and Imavov.
Father Times and the Son have passed. Obviously, Father Time is undefeated, but to Tony and Izzy, going through the psychopathic training methods of David Goggins is probably a small price to pay if it means they
Jean-Claude Van Damme ass trainer.
can turn the clocks back on their
Listen, Adesanya been cringe, sure, but his striking is insane.
careers and get a taste of glory again. Whereas some fighters know when to gracefully retire, some fighters instead choose to take drastic measures to feel like they're that guy again, and for reasons I cannot explain, some...
I don't think the KO from Pereira was the end. They faced off before in kickboxing. It seems like Sean Strickland was the end. I don't know. And that's a wild statement.
fighters' drastic measures is David Goggins. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Goggins as a trainer. Do you think it makes any sense for him to be training fighters, or has this science experiment crashed and burned? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
You guys, let me explain to you why I make fun of David Goggins. He is a fraudulent man. He's an easy target. He is a fraud. Bro, you are so great at running down the street. You're not hard. You're not tough. You run, my man. And do you know why I know you're fraudulent? Because as I make fun of you and you post your little TikTok video, I'm a hard man. I'll show up. I'll handle this like a man. No, you won't, dude. I train at Extreme Couture. I'm easy to find. You live in Las Vegas. I live in Las Vegas. Show up. Mitch showed up. Do you not know how to use GPS, my man? Do you not know how to get in your
CTE Strickland on his high horse about what a real man is. He's got a point, but he seems to be clout chasing.
Your car? I'll tell you what, why don't you jog down? But you won't, dude, because you are a fraud. You go on TikTok and you make these stupid videos. You are a fraud, and that's why I make fun of you, and that's why you will never show up, because I will expose you. I will expose you. So just stay on TikTok and keep running, or man up and show up, which you won't.
What is Goggins going to do? Show up to Sean Strickland's gym and just get his fucking face melted off? That's not fair. Maybe it is. Maybe that's what the world needs.